Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention?
Great Scott! There's no crying in baseball!
You better hold on tight, Spider Monkey.
This is where the fun begins.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. That's right, we're ranking Hard Eyes. Hard Eyes is a 2025 American romantic comedy slasher film where two co-workers working late on Valentine's Day are mistaken for a couple by the infamous Hard Eyes killer. Honestly, I had a surprisingly good time watching this movie. I kind of had low expectations, but was surprised by how much I enjoyed it. Let's get into why with the 10 essential aspects of the movie. First is plot. Does the movie follow a comprehensive story arc and is plausible within the world that has been created? I thought the story was simple. I am somebody who does not watch trailers before I go to watch a movie. I really try to avoid them because honestly, they just have way too many spoilers most of the time. So I didn't know what to expect with this movie. I'd actually seen nothing but like a poster, and that was it. And I was kind of caught off guard because I thought this movie was going to be a slasher with some romance kind of sprinkled into it. But rather, this movie is very much a romantic comedy with the twist of it being a slasher, having some slasher elements in there sprinkled in. It is more of a romantic comedy, and personally, I like that better. Not a huge fan of slashers. They're okay, they have their place, but I much prefer romantic comedy. That's the kind of genre I enjoy. So I was happy that that decision was made. And early on in this movie, they do a good job of setting the tone about how serious to take this movie. It is not meant to be taken that serious. Therefore, it's kind of easy to watch. You're not really picking it apart because you know that most of the things that are happening that seem kind of silly, they're done on purpose. The movie's not meant to be taken super serious. So I enjoyed it. I thought it was really funny, and I thought the way that they made fun of couples and wrapped this whole Valentine's Day plot with a killer, I thought they were clever with it and had fun with it. I thought it was an interesting story. Second is attraction. Does the movie have an interesting premise with a high entertainment value? You know, I think if you enjoy romantic comedies and can stomach some horror aspects, I think you'll have a lot of fun with this movie. I think it's very entertaining in that sense. I think if you are someone who is really into horror movies, you're probably going to be a little disappointed because it's not quite the tone of a typical horror movie. But I will say with the horror aspects of the movie, they're creative. They do a good job. Some of the kills are interesting. They're kind of fun to watch, or just interesting to watch. They try to make it a little different. It's not just a really bland slasher. They try to be creative, especially with the topic of Valentine's Day and love. I thought they did a good job. So if you enjoy horror and you can kind of take a movie not so seriously, I still think you'll have a good time with this movie. Third is theme. What message or truth is a movie trying to convey? There's not much of a message here other than there is a plot line of the tension between genuine love and the superficial love that is being sold to the masses with this holiday called Valentine's Day. How love gets thrown into your face, and there's a lot of people who aren't necessarily in love, are kind of questioning love, and it kind of just pokes fun at couples who are just overly lovey and the people that hate it, but also touches on why people are overly lovey and why that does exist. There's kind of just a theme about love. Obviously, a movie where there's a killer on Valentine's Day, the theme of this movie is about love. Fourth is dialogue. Is there a real feel to the conversation? Now, at the beginning of this movie, they set that tone that it's not that serious of a movie, so I'm not really diving into the dialogue, making sure it feels real. But I will say there are a lot of jokes in this movie. It is very much a comedy, and they do not all hit. There are some bad jokes in there. But I will say that there are several good jokes. Most of them occur with the two main characters, and the conversations that they have are important. They're the two main characters that are supposed to be falling in love or talking about love. I liked their conversations. I thought they were did a good job. I thought they were interesting. They did have their share of bad jokes, but they had their fair share of good ones. I thought they offset themselves enough to have a good time. But the two main characters that talk the most in this movie have good dialogue that isn't super cringy, and when it is, it's kind of in a joking manner, and you can tell that it's just part of the movie. Fifth is acting. Are the characters convincing? Now, the main actress and actor in this movie is Olivia Holt and Mason Gooding, and I thought they did a good job. I thought their characters were good enough. I thought they had good chemistry. It's kind of hard because, there wasn't any super serious scenes that had me going, but when they did try to get serious, it did feel serious. Now, there is always kind of comedy sprinkled into this movie, so it never gets a chance for them to really flex their muscles, but I thought they did a good job working with each other. I thought they made these characters feel convincing. It's pretty good acting for a horror movie. 6 is cinematography. Is there a creative use of lighting, setting, and wardrobe to convey emotion? I thought they did a really good job with the killer in this movie. I thought they were really creative. The whole love theme is sprinkled out in the killer throughout the entire movie. The killer, I like the hard eyes thing. As much as it's just the title, I do think it was cool. I thought it was a fun look, but all the weapons that are used in this film are all also love themed. I liked that. He kind of does the Cupid with the arrow thing. I enjoy that. Thought that was cool. I thought they were very creative with the kills. They weren't just trying to do very simple, boring kills. They did try to have some kills in there that were entertaining or at least funny, and I thought they were very successful. I thought they did a good job. As far as emotion, it's hard to say. I mean, it's a comedy movie. Horror movies only really, they go for fear, but you never really get that invested in characters. It's hard. This movie kind of rides the line because it is a romantic comedy. You do find yourself rooting for the main characters, but would I say I'm very attached? Not really. I don't really get that attached. I'm not that emotional, but I would say you're probably more attached to these characters than your average horror movie. So I feel like they did a decent job with what they were trying to do as far as emotions go. 7th is editing, and this is all about the pace of the movie. The movie is an hour and 37 minutes long, and the ending of this movie was dragged on a little bit. They kind of went too hard with the ending. I feel like they should have just kept it more simple than they were going for. But at an hour and 37, it's not that long. If they just fixed the ending, I feel like it would have ended up somewhere between an hour 25 and 30. There's probably 10 minutes of just unneeded extra stuff at the end there. But otherwise, I can't really complain that much. For a movie that's supposed to be entertaining, I would want you to be in that hour 30 and below mark. 8th is soundtrack. Now, it has been a little while since I watched this movie, and I don't really remember much about the soundtrack, but I do remember it being present. Of course, it's not doing anything for the movie extra. It's not going to make it memorable, but I don't remember it being bad. 9th is directing. Now, I feel the director is in charge of the previous 8 aspects. They're the ones that have to put it all together, give it their stamp of approval, and make a good movie. Now, the director of this movie is Josh Rubin, and this is his 3rd movie. The 3 total movies that he's directed are Scare Me, Werewolves Within, and Hard Eyes. Never even heard of the previous 2 movies that he's directed, but based on this movie alone, I like what he's doing. I thought he did a good job. It's one of the few movies I've seen lately that was made to be an entertaining movie and just hit on it. It was a good, entertaining movie. I feel like he had a good idea on how to just keep it simple, and though it wasn't perfect, there's definitely things to improve to make it more memorable. I can just appreciate finally getting a movie that is just easy to watch, that's not just made for kids. 10th is time. Will it stand the test of time? You know, honestly, for the most part, I would say no. It's not going to stand the test of time just because there's so many horror movies and they all kind of stand out for their own reasons. And this one doesn't necessarily have a reason to stand out. However, I will say the theme of Valentine's Day, it's the only memorable Valentine's Day movie that I know of. Now, I'm sure there might be one or two horror Valentine's Day movies out there, but this one is a solid one. It's the only one I know of, so it will kind of stand the test of time for me as one of the only Valentine's Day horror movies I enjoy, but otherwise, not really. Now for the review section. Rotten Tomatoes critics gives it an 80. The audience gives it a 79. And IMDb gives it a 67. Most of the time I feel like I side with IMDb, but I am much more with the 80 and 79 here. I think those are solid. I think this is a low B movie. It's just a quality movie. It doesn't bring anything new to the table as far as bumping it up into that A section. It's just not that good of a movie. It's not that unique, and it doesn't execute that well, but it just does a good job at what it was trying to do. Trying to be romantic, trying to be funny, throwing some horror aspects in there. And I thought all three of those landed in some sort of way. I liked the romance, I thought it was funny at points, and I thought the kills were interesting. So it's just a good, solid entertainment movie. It belongs in that low B range. Finally, for the rankings. For the year of 2025, out of 6 total movies on the entertainment side, it is going to be first above Dogman. Not that hard of a rating, honestly, really, because it's just made for adults and it does a fairly good job. Dogman was entertaining, surprisingly entertaining for me, but at its core, it's really meant for young kids, and I just happened to find some things I enjoyed about it as an adult, but its core audience is young children. Hard Eyes is made for adults. It's entertaining and it does a good job. Not that hard of a placement for me, honestly. Now, cinematically, out of 6 total movies, it is going to be second, just below Dogman and above One of Them Days. Now, I have it above One of Them Days really for the emotional aspect and somewhat of the creativity. I do think it is more creative. I thought it had more avenues to be creative than One of Them Days, but I just felt more of a connection with the whole romance side. Now, that is kind of cheesy, kind of easy to do. I will say you can mess it up, but it's for someone like me who's just kind of a sucker for love stories. I just enjoy the romance in it more, and I felt myself being tied to those characters more than in One of Them Days, where I'm not necessarily the audience, and it doesn't do anything extra for someone who's not the audience to really get emotionally tied to those characters. Now, I do have it below Dogman, and that is purely just for execution. I would say that Dogman, now creativity-wise, I would give it to Dogman. It is definitely, the animation is interesting. I think the world is a little bit bigger and more interesting as far as just being creative. I thought the transitions in that movie were really interesting. I think emotionally, it also hits emotionally a little harder than Hard Eyes does. Hard Eyes is kind of that cheap romance that I just kind of like because I like it. Dogman, I thought, actually had some poignant themes to it that were addressed to adults that made you think about your own life. I just think that represents film as an art form better than something like Hard Eyes that is really made a lot more for entertainment, but it just does a quality job and adds some touches of cinematography in there. Now, for the decade of the 2020s, out of 39 total movies on the entertainment side, it is going to be second, just below The Fall Guy and above Sonic 3. I had a really good time with this movie, and the reason it's above Sonic 3 is just because it's made for adults. Again, kind of like Dogman. It's made for adults. I'm an adult. I'm going to enjoy it more. Sonic 3 I liked, and I really liked Jim Carrey in it, but Hard Eyes, I kind of just enjoyed the entire movie more. But I do have it below The Fall Guy because the comedy in The Fall Guy is executed better. In my personal opinion, I think it is written better. I prefer it, but I had a good time with Hard Eyes. I think it's creative enough. I like the story enough. I like the romance enough for me to watch it several times over again, and I would have no problems at all. I just would prefer The Fall Guy because I think the comedy is better. Now, cinematically, out of 39 total movies, I have it 18th, just below Moana 2 and above Beetlejuice. Now, again, this movie isn't made for cinematography, but it does have some aspects in there. I have it above Beetlejuice because Beetlejuice is creative, but it does have some issues. The plot's a little all over the place. Hard Eyes, is, though it's just an entertainment movie, is executed fairly well. Now, it doesn't do everything great, but it does a good job, and it just has enough of that emotional and creative side for me to just be a more complete project than something like Beetlejuice, where something like the plot problems, it's something that ties on for me, and I feel like less plot problems with the same amount of creativity. It's just a better representation of cinema. Now, I do have it below Moana 2, and that is just a lot more for the Moana 2 kind of gets credit for the fact that it is innocent. It is a kid's movie. It does have a good message, a sweet message. It doesn't really go over the top. The animation is really interesting. The world is interesting. I just think it's a little more wholesome, and I usually, unless they do a really good job with a message that's not wholesome, I'm going to prefer the movie that is more wholesome, and that's just kind of where it lied for me between Moana 2 and Hard Eyes. Now, all time on the entertainment side, out of 51 total movies, it is going to be 6. Again, just below The Fall Guy, but above A Million Ways to Die in the West. One of the things that I don't love about A Million Ways to Die in the West is how long it is. I think Hard Eyes is definitely, it's shorter, and it's an easier watch. You're not waiting for the movie to end, and that's a huge draw for me. But honestly, they're both kind of the same on the comedic aspect. There's a lot of jokes that don't hit in A Million Ways to Die in the West, but there's enough that do for me to like it. Hard Eyes is really the same way, except also with both have some romance in there, but I feel like the comedy is more focused on the romance in Hard Eyes, and I just enjoy that better. Wasn't really that hard for me to make that decision. Now, cinematically, out of 51 total movies, it is going to be 24th, again, just below Moana 2 and above Beetlejuice, and it's there for the exact same reasons as before. That's all I've got for Hard Eyes. If you have not seen it, I would recommend go watching it. I think it's a really good movie. It's quality. It's just a good entertainment movie, and I feel like we haven't had that many movies lately that are just a good time to sit down and watch that aren't kids movies, that are made for adults. Please make sure to comment your opinion. I really enjoy it when you guys comment. It's the whole reason I'm Mr. Majoritarian, is because it's all about the people. I want to hear what you have to say. It's why I created this channel. If you're interested in somebody who has the same format as me, but a totally different list, then go check out my best friend Bosso Movie Reviews. He does the same ranking against the same year, decade, and all time, but he has done a lot more past movies. I try to keep up with present movies a lot more than he does, so you might go watch one of your favorite movies. Go check them out if you're interested. Otherwise, comment a movie that you want me to review. I have an ongoing list. I am slowly picking that off. I'm gonna get a couple here after this video going, but make sure you subscribe so that you can watch me review the movie that you comment. But otherwise, I'm Mr. Majoritarian. Stay classy, San Diego.